Well, hello and a very warm welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. If you're expecting Paul, he is here.
Hello.
Yes, he's there in the background, isn't it marvellous? But I'm on first today. My name is Andy Carville, I'm sure you all know that. But I'm on first today, so I thought I'd actually introduce the show. So welcome to our second Pro webinar. I think because it's Pro, I went and had my hair cut today. It's not particularly stylish, I know, but anyway, it's something, isn't it? It's something. So what are we going to be talking about in this particular show? We're going to be dealing with what I think is some of the most beautiful sounds. Again, we're talking, I suppose, a lot about harmony, which is my favourite subject, to be honest. And up to now, we've done a lot of talk about major harmonies. We've talked about the 2-5-1 progression in a major sense. But today we're going to be looking more at minor keys. As I say, actually my favourites. I really do like the minor sounds. Very emotional, very evocative, if you like. Some people say it's just a sad sound. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I just think it's a very evocative and beautiful sound. Where we're going to lead to, and I'll use the phrase lead to, is a 2-5-1 progression, but in a minor key. Now, I better explain. I'm going to be doing some of the theory, not all of the theory, because if we go into all of the theory, we'll be here for several hours, if not days, in fact. But I'm going to go into some of the theory, so at least you get some background to how this all comes about. I'm going to show you a few shortcuts, and right at the end of this little section, we're going to do a real shortcut that actually makes it a lot easier than maybe this first section sounds. So this first section, it's not difficult. Difficult's the wrong word, but it can just be a little bit mind-bending slightly. So I know all you Pro subscribers can watch this as many times as you like. Please do watch it several times. Perhaps have a pen and paper ready when you actually watch the repeat or access it again, because there are a few things just to take note of. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what we call relative minor or relative major key signatures. So what that actually means is every key signature has a relative, a close relation, but in the minor or the major alternative. Now, I'm just going to, Paul's left me here with a load of buttons to press, which is my absolute nightmare, if I'm honest. So let me hopefully find the right button. Hang on a second. Oh, there we go. There we go. I think that just about tells you everything that we need to know. I'm just using the piano sound. Fine, good. Now, we've talked about this several times. The first thing I'm going to talk to you about, which is how to actually create a formula for a major scale. I'm going to whip through this very quickly because we have talked about it several times, but this is a very useful thing and it's a good place to start. Okay, I want to make a major scale, so there is a simple combination of tones and semitones which allow you to play any of the major scales. I'm going to do this in C to start off with, just because it's the easiest key. Everybody probably knows the major scale of C because it's just the white notes. Don't think I've made this up just to fit the scale of C, because as you'll see in a moment, it works for any key. So here we go, very quickly. You start on the root note. Now, if we're trying to work out the scale of C, your root note is, surprise, surprise, C. There we go, fine. Now to find the second note, you go up a tone, which is 2 semitones. So C, tone, tone, semitone, because it's the very next key, tone, 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 semitone. So do that again, root note, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Give me another key, Paul.
E flat.
E flat. Oh yes, okay. E flat. So it starts on the root note, E flat. There we go. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Okay. A very useful thing to know. It gives you access to all sorts of things, chord construction, all sorts of different things. It's also very useful to work out what we call scale chords. If you were watching last week, we talked a bit about scale chords, and again, I'm going to do this very quickly just in case you haven't seen this before. I think most of you will have seen this before for sure. So what I can do now is, on that C scale, I can create a chord based on every note. And how I do that is, in simple terms, play a note, miss a note, play a note, miss a note, play a note. And for those of you in the know, in scale terms, that's the first note, the third note, and the fifth note. Okay? And of course, that is the chord of C. Now you may think, well, if I go to the D, then it's going to be a chord of D. No, because D has an F sharp in it, and F sharp isn't in the scale of C. Okay, so I have to lower the F sharp down to F. So that actually makes a chord of D minor. Okay, and if I follow the same procedure all the way up, what I have is the chord of C, the chord of D minor, the chord of E minor, the chord of F, the chord of G, the chord of A minor. A funny one. Now we haven't talking. What am I saying? We haven't spoken very much about the seventh chord because it's a slightly weird chord. So C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, a B diminished. It's only 3 notes. Don't be scared of chords. It's an important point here, because actually chords, no matter how complicated their name may sound, are only combinations of notes. There's nothing really difficult about a B diminished. It's just those 3 notes. And then the next one, we're back to C. So we're back where we started from. Okay. Now, why have I shown you that? Why have we started there? Well, if I want to work out the relative minor of C, so we've done C major up to now, I want to work out the relative minor. What I have to do is, let me go to C and simply go down 3 semitones. 1, 2, 3. So actually, in musical terms, the relative minor of C major is A minor. I'll just explain that again. So if we start on C, I've got C major. I want the relative minor, and it's A. And that works with any key. So let's do the major of B flat. Okay? If I go down 3 semitones, 1, 2, 3, I land on G. So the relative minor of B flat major is G minor. It also works the other way around. So if I started at G minor, I'd go up 3 and land on the relative major. So in other words, those 2 are related. C and A are related. G and E are related. Just go down 3. Now, what that actually means is that the natural minor scale, and this is an important point, because the really complicated things about minor scales is there's not just one of them. There's actually 3 of them, believe it or not. But what we call the natural minor is exactly the same scale as the major, but starting on the root note of the minor. Does that make sense, Paul?
Yeah.
Does it? Good. Good Lord. I'm not sure that I understood it. But anyway, so if it's C, I go down to A, and I now play the same scale, all the white notes, but starting on the A. And that's called A natural minor scale. Okay, let's just take a moment to soak that information up. Now, you have some downloadable, am I using the right phrase here, Paul? Resources that you can access, because this is a pro webinar. So let me show you this. If I press the right button, yay, look at that. So there's a little chart which just shows the major scale, the relative minor in the next column, and how many sharps are, or flats indeed, are in those particular scales. So if you want that chart, you can have that with our compliments. That's not a problem at all. And as you can see, as we've just discussed, the very one at the top there, C major, has got no sharps and flats. The relative minor is A minor, and that also has no sharps and flats. Okay? But, what does that do to our scale chords? Now, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about this, and that's my next screen, if I can remember what's next. Is it that one? Yes, it is. Look at that. Look at that. Now, we've already done line number 1, which is the scale chords in C major. As you can see, it's C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished to C. Now, the next line, line number 2, is what we call the extended scale chords. Now, just to go back to the beginning, remember we started on a note, we missed a note, played a note, missed a note, played a note. Well, we do the same procedure again. We miss a note and we play a note. That is the extended chord for the C chord. It's a C major 7. And as you can read there on the second line, the extended chords are C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G7. Now this is a dominant 7, just a G7 in effect. And then we have an A minor 7. And now we have something a bit different, because that 7 chord, which started life as a B diminished, when we had another note on top, it changes the chord. It's still a B chord, but it sounds complicated, but it really isn't. It's called a B minor 7 flat 5. Now all it is that, which is, it's a G7, A minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5. So it's not difficult to play, it just sounds complicated. But don't think of it as complicated. This is a key one. So we're coming back to this very shortly. It will be very important in our minor 2, 5, 1. Okay. B minor 7 flat 5. By the way, this is just a side note. Don't take too much notice of this. They're also known as half diminished chords. The only reason I mention that is if you hear the term half diminished, it means a minor 7 flat 5 chord. Okay? And then we're back to C major 7 again. Okay. Now then, remember we said that's the relative minor. So actually, what happens here is you have the same chords, but just starting from the A minor. Okay, so line number 3 here actually shows an A minor. This is just the 3-note version for now. It's B diminished is the second chord. The third chord is C. The 4 chord is D minor. The 5 chord is E minor. The where are we? 6 chord is F. The 7 chord is G, and then we're back to A minor again. The extended chords, A minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5, that's the 2 chord. 3 chord is C major 7, 4 chord is D minor 7, 5 chord is E minor 7, 6 chord is F major 7, 7 chord is G7, and the 8 chord is we're back to A minor 7. Important point for you to remember. Officially, the 1 chord in the extended version can be an A minor 7. However, don't start a piece of music on a minor 7 chord. And if you're playing in a minor key, which is that's where we're heading, if you're playing in a minor key, just use the A minor in this particular example. Okay? Hope that's clear. Hope that's clear. Because if you start on a minor 7, the harmony isn't very clear. What key is that? Well, it's a minor 7 chord, so it's not very clear. If I just play an A minor, it's obviously A minor, frankly. Okay. So, let's just rewind, and Paul talked about this actually at the last session that we had here, which is the major, and I'm going back to major now, 2, 5, 1 progression. So I'm just going to go back up a line to line number 2. That's a couple of lines actually. To line number 2. And the 2 chord is that D minor 7. The 5 chord is G7. And the 1 chord is the C. So it's a very logical progression. Now, if we're doing this in A minor, we've got some different chords. We've got an A minor, that's your key chord. The 2 chord becomes this B minor 7 flat 5. Now, I've made one change, and I'm not going to explain really why, but the 5 chord, we're not going to play E minor, but we're going to play E7. Very brief sentence. The reason is in the harmonic minor scales and the melodic minor scales, there is a G sharp, and that E7 chord that's created is actually a 7th E7, pushes you back to the A minor, where the E minor, which is the 5 chord I've written here, doesn't really sort of work. It sort of works, but it's not as strong as that. Okay, so always think of the 5th chord as a dominant 7th chord, exactly the same way that you do in a major 2-5-1. In actual fact, the 5th chord is exactly the same whether you're in major or minor. Now, this takes us on to a shortcut. The shortcut is that actually the difference between a major 2-5-1 and a minor 2-5-1 is only 2 notes. It's only 2 notes. Now, let me go back to the key of C for a moment. And if you remember, C is your home chord. The 2 chord is D minor 7, and then a G7, back to C. Now, the first change is an obvious one. If I want to play a minor version of this 2-5-1. So my first chord is going to be a C minor, not C major. Fairly obvious, actually. So my first chord is C minor. My second chord is actually still D minor 7, but this time with a flat 5. Well, how do I work out which is the fifth? Well, first thing is, we're always playing, well, I'm playing at the moment in root position. Of course, inversions are possible, etc., etc. But I'm just playing in root position, and that's my D minor 7. So the D is the 1, the F is the 3, and the A is the 5. So whatever chord you play, it's that note. I'm playing it with my third finger at the moment. Okay, so A minor 7, it's that note there is the fifth. And all I have to do is move the fifth from there down to there. So the full progression, here's your C minor chord. Here's your D minor 7 with the flattened fifth. The G7, which is exactly the same, major or minor. Back to C minor. So let's now go to A minor again then. So A minor. So your 2 chord is the B minor 7. B minor 7, there it is. There's the fifth, flat 5. Now, for me, that's a lovely sound. Beautiful sound. And that flat 5. Now, I know that perhaps sounds a little convoluted, but I've explained a bit of the theory behind it. But all you have to remember is, think of exactly the same 2-5-1 that you would do in major, but remember to play the minor chord at the beginning, which is obvious because that's the key you're in, and flatten the fifth note of the second chord. And the fifth chord is exactly the same. So if we were doing this in F minor, your first chord would be F minor. Your second chord, well, in major it will be G minor 7 with a flat 5. Okay, flat 5. To the C7 to F minor. Okay. Now, sounds a bit convoluted. I hope that made some kind of sense, because we're now going to use this in the way that Paul used the major 2-5-1 last time we were here. So let me go to a little piece of music. Oh, by the way, you can download this minor scale chords sheet if you want to. You can have that with pleasure. And if I press button 6, we should have now here, here's a little tune in a minor key, Love Story. Okay, I've chose this piece because actually the opening section of Love Story is really, really easy. There's only 2 left-hand chords. Well, in the copy that I have at home. And as you can see here, it's basically in A minor. And the other chord is an E7. And that's all you do is flip between those 2 through the piece. So it's A minor, E7, A minor, etc. Now, the second time I've gone through this opening melody, I've added some 2 chords into the melody. So I've created, because that E7, by the way, is the 5th chord. That's the 5 chord. and that pushes you back to the 1 chord, 5 chord, which pushes you back to the 1 chord. We can now slip in some 2 chords, this B minor 7 flat 5. Here we go. E7, which pushes you back to the A minor, B minor 7 flat 5, to the E7, now I'm doing our old trick there. We've talked about this many times. It's not written in the sheet here, but I was just adding in the 9th note, or as Paul calls it, the sus2. You can call it either way. So all I'm doing there, just to make that little sort of sophisticated run at the end there, is including in my A minor chord the B note. Lovely sound, lovely sound. Just that sort of sound. Now here's a free, related but not sort of related, a free little trick which actually you can use in both major and minor, and that's how to find some chords really quickly. And I'm going to incorporate this little trick into my final version of Love Story, which we're going to do in just a moment. Strap yourself in. Okay, here's just a simple little trick. You have to play these chords in root position again. So I'm now going to play a C chord. There it is. Root position, which means my C is at the bottom there. It's the bottom note. Okay, there. Now, if I stretch my thumb and just play the C above, it's still a C chord. Okay, I've just got 2 C's in it now. I've got one at the bottom and one at the top. But if I take that thumb and take it down a semitone, this is C major 7. And I take the thumb down another semitone, it's C7, the dominant 7. And if I take it down another semitone, it's C6. So if you want a quick way of finding some chords, start with root position. Here's F. Add the octave above. Here's my F here. I'm going to add that with my thumb. Drop it a semitone, major 7, drop it a semitone, dominant 7, or just F7. Drop it again, F6. You can do exactly the same with minor keys. Exactly the same. So, but actually in a minor key, it's more useful to actually add in to a piece of music. So I'm going to play A minor. There it is, but I'm going to add this note here for the octave and then drop it a semitone for an odd chord called A minor major 7. Yeah, really. It's an odd sound. It's sort of the end of the Pink Panther. It's that sort of sound. So A minor, A at the top, minor major 7, drop it again, A minor 7, drop it again, A minor 6. Now, I think it's there. Is it there? Yes, there it is. Oh, it's bigger now. I can actually see it as well, which is really useful. Now, I've done 3 versions here of Love Story, just the opening theme. The first version, which I've marked as version 1, seems to make logical sense. Version 1 is just the A minor and E7. Then we go into version 2, where we've added some of the B minor 7s, the 2 chords, which leads on to the 5 chord and back to the 1 chord. And then in version 3, I've added this minor major 7 sort of run. So let me just show you the effect. I'm going to use a little style now, if I can remember how to work this. It's not my trusty PA1000. It's much better, of course, but I just not too sure which buttons to press. So here we go. Here's an A minor. This is called Orchestral Ballad, by the way. Minor major 7. Ooh, that's nice, isn't it? To the 7. To the 6. So, putting all of that together. So here's the simple version, just with 2 chords. Nothing wrong with this, by the way. Here's version 2 with the B minor 7 flat 5. Now here's the one with the drop down. So that's actually how you would build an arrangement. So what we've done there is we've taken just a melody with 2 chords, we've made it into a 3 chord, and then we've made it into a multiple chord with these minor runs with the 2 chord and the 5 chord, and we're swapping between the 2, all sorts of things. So I hope that made sense. You probably do need to watch this again with a pen and paper and make a few notes as you go through. You can have all of these resources if you want. I'll just go back to, there we go, because I'm going to finish off now. Thank you for listening. I hope that was okay. And I'm going to pass you over now to the legend that is Mr. Paul Carman.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks, well done.
Marvellous, marvellous.
Thank you very much, Andy. I hope, I mean, I just sat back and listened. That's the first time I've heard Andy do that actual routine. And I hope, like me, you can hear how much difference just putting those few extra chords in. We spent most of Pro Webinar 1 talking about how you make your playing more professional, and that's really where we wanted to complete that little bit of the picture today. The next Pro Webinar will probably go on to something totally and utterly different, so don't think we're going to stay on this all the time. But what I was sat there thinking was that the mere fact that you've sort of registered for this webinar shows me that there's a keenness to learn. And I basically think you've got 2 choices. You can either do what, let's be honest, the majority of home players do, which is to just open the book and play the tune. Or you can spend that little bit of time and convert what is going to be a basic, let's call it a busker's copy, into something a lot more professional sounding. And I think I used the phrase in the last Pro Web, why wouldn't you want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to just stretch yourself just a little bit and, introduce some of these things? So what I'm going to do for my part today, we are literally going to put it all together now, just to finish this sort of topic off. And what I've got is, I'm just going to have to excuse me while I lean over and get my iPad. There we go. Let's pop that there. So, hopefully, let's go to that one. There we go. Right. So what you've got, what you can see in front of you at the minute is basically it's just a busker's copy of Fly Me to the Moon, and this is typical of the type of music that we all tend to work from as keyboard players. More than piano copies, really. So we've got what we need. We've got our top line, our melody, and we've got our chord symbols. But what we need to do, and I can't find the scene at the minute, so just bear with me. Let's just have a quick look. There we go. That should be the one. That's better. That's what I wanted. So that's what you're now seeing is my actual iPad in front of you. And what I've marked up on here is we keep going on about this 251, and you're probably fed up of us talking about it, but it's so crucial to this idea of adding a few extra chords and spicing things up a little bit. Fly Me to the Moon, a good old standard. Before I start scribbling over anything, I just wanted to point out to you that on line 1, there it is, 251. So if you remember what we said from the first webinar, is that we look at our destination chord, which is C, all right, C major 7. We take our 2, which is D minor 7, our 5 is G7. So it's already in there, but I'll show you how we make a little bit more of it later. We go on to line 2. We've got an E7 resolving to an A minor 7. That's a 5-1. It's the one actually that Andy's just used in Love Story. It's already done for us. We look down on this 4th line here. There it is again, 2, 5, 1. And it happens in the next line, 2, 5, 1. And it doesn't happen by accident. It happens because it sounds great. And so many tunes, and I think you probably remember from the first webinar that I said you've probably played lots of 251s and not actually realised you'd done it. But what I want to do now is show you, before we start scribbling over this and build our little arrangement up that we're going to sort of finish up with, I just want to show you one more way of adding an extra chord in. And this uses the diminished 7th chord. Now, the good news about diminished 7th chords, you only have to learn 3 shapes. You can do, let me just put this back onto piano. Oh, that's because Andy's been pressing buttons.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. So first shape, 2 white notes either end and 2 black notes in the middle. So we've got G, B flat, C sharp or D flat, and E. That's our shape number 1. Now, depending the inversion you play, that could be G diminished 7, it could be B flat diminished 7, it could be A sharp, same note, but it could be C sharp or D flat diminished 7, or it could be E. The other shape is the total opposite of that. We've got the 2 white notes in the middle and the 2 black notes either end. That can be F sharp or G flat. I think you get the idea. Whatever note is in the chord, it can be that flavour of diminished 7, if you want to call it that. And the third shape is that one, which is the F, A flat, B and D. Now, the reason there's only 3 shapes, if you look chromatically, if we just go from C up to C, each one of those notes only appears once in those 3 shapes. So, for example, if I wanted to find C sharp diminished, there is only one of those 3 shapes that has a C sharp in it, so it must be that one. If I wanted F diminished 7th, it must be that one, because that is the only one of those 3 shapes that has the F natural in it. Now, how do we use that as a passing chord? Well, if you've read the latest magazine, you will have seen I actually use a bit of this song as an example. And I think this works really well when the destination chord is a minor chord. It does work on major, but it's just a little bit nicer when you go into a minor. So if we look in that first bar, we're going from A minor 7. Our next destination chord is D minor 7. Well, it's ever so easy. You take the root note of our destination chord, we go down a semitone, and that tells me we're on C sharp, so we need C sharp diminished 7th. So instead of going, we would go, it's just got that little extra bit of pizzazz about it. It's that finishing touch. We could do it when we're going to the G7, actually, in the next bar. Although you don't want to overdo this, I'm just using this as an example. So we're going to G, go down a semitone, so F sharp. So we need an F sharp diminished. So let's go right back to the beginning. We could even do one here. We're going to C, so we take a B diminished. Now, the whole point of this is you can add as many or as few as you want. I think all we're doing at this stage is trying to encourage you to at least try to put a few extra chords in there. So that's how you use a diminished 7th as a passing chord. You take your destination chord, you take its root note down a semitone, and that will tell you the name or the root note of the diminished 7th chord that you actually need. Right, so let's now try and put everything together. I'm just going to put this on. There we go. Now, what we're going to do is start scribbling on our piece of music here. And again, if you go to the text under the YouTube video, you'll see there is a Dropbox link. And all of Andy's resources are there. I do understand that you can't always see them totally clearly on the screen because we're limited for size of screen. You can see on these bigger pieces we've had to sort of squash the keyboard across to one side. But if you go and print the resources, they will be clear. I've done the basic version of Fly Me to the Moon, and then I've done a version with my scribble all over it, which will show you the sort of changes that we've made. I've picked this particular copy on purpose, and just before we go into this, I just want to tell you one thing. Don't always trust that the copy that you've got is going to be correct. I'll get rid of my email. You don't want to read my emails while we're live. Trying to sell me a pair of shoes. So I'm going to, when we get to the second line, I will point something out to you that is definitely wrong on this copy, and I'll show you how you can spot it and put it right. So we've already said that coming into bar 2, we could put our C sharp diminished. So let's actually write that on here. C sharp diminished, and that will take us then to our D minor. I don't think we'll try and put any more diminished chords in there, but as we showed earlier, you could do. Then we get to the end of the line. We're on C major 7 and my destination chord is F. So why don't we do a trusty 2-5-1 to take us to that F? Well, that would F, the 2 is the G, so we'll have a G minor 7, and then the 5 is the C, so we'll have a C7. So let's see if we can squeeze that in at the second half of this bar at the end of line 1. I'm going to have to write small here, G minor 7 to C7. Let's just try it as we go along. So what we've got is, that's nice. And that will take us nicely to that F. Okay. Now, we've got a really interesting one now. It tells me that my next chord is D minor 6. Well, we don't need to go into all the whys and wherefores, but trust me, D minor 6 is exactly the same as a chord that Andy's just used, which is this B minor 7 with a flattened fifth. They're exactly the same notes. But I'm going to change that D minor 6 to the B minor 7 with a flattened fifth. Why? Because it gives me the right bass note for the 2-5-1. So I'm sorry, D minor 6, you'll go in and we'll end up with B minor 7 flattened fifth. Just there. And that will give us a nice 2-5-1. And that takes us to the A minor. Now, I'm just going to move this little thing over to the side. This is where we have a glaring mistake because they're telling me C sharp, and actually that is the right melody note. So let's just go to that point. It tells me I want C sharp, but it hasn't given me a chord. It stayed on A minor 7. It sounds dreadful because the A minor 7's got a C natural in it, and the C sharp, the melody note. So that's easy remedied because, sorry, I've got to keep moving this about now. Our next chord is D minor 7. What is the 5 of D minor 7? It's an A 7th. And an A 7th has got a C sharp in it. So I think we've solved the mystery of the chord. We need an A7 just there. We then go to our D minor 7, G7. Next chord is E minor 7. Let's see if we can be really clever here. Andy talked about these chords minor 7th with flattened fifth. And I just want to reiterate what Andy has said. When I was first learning to play, that would do nothing more than put me off ever learning it. Just because it's a string of letters and numbers that I didn't understand. But at the end of the day, my teacher then said, but hang on, it's still a 4-note chord. And you can play C7, you can play G7. So, yes, you can play these minor 7th with a flattened fifth. You've just got to work out what the actual notes are. Now, because of the time restraint of tonight, just trust me that the 2-5-1 of E minor is actually F sharp minor 7 with a flattened fifth. It goes to B7 and then it will go to the E minor 7. So let me write this one in. So we've got F sharp minor 7 flattened fifth, and then we go to B7 there. That's probably the most difficult one we're going to do in this piece, but it sounds really nice. So if I take it from that sort of rogue A7, it just, you know, I've not long learnt this 2-5-1, so don't think this is something that I've done for the last 30 years. I've learnt this in the last 2 to 3 years, and it's absolutely transformed the way that I approach arranging pieces of music. So we've hit E minor 7, and then it goes to A minor 7. Then that next chord, although you can't see it behind that bar, it's a D minor 7. I'm going to be a bit crafty here. D minor 7 The 2 is an E, so that would mean we need an E minor 7 with a flattened 5th. And the 5 would be an A7. So what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to forget that A minor, just there. And I'm going to cross that out. Whoops, pen's gone off. There we go. I'm going to cross that out. And I'm going to go straight to E minor 7, flattened 5th, because we're already on E minor 7. And then go to an A7. And that should lead us into that D minor. Let's see if it does. Let's go back to that rogue A7 at the end of line 2. Works perfectly. Okay. When we go back to the repeat, we're starting on A minor 7, or let's say A minor. What was the 2-5-1 that Andy did? And we did it earlier. B minor 7, flattened 5th to E7. So, I'm sorry, D minor 6, you've gone again. And B, sorry, it's ever so hard to write like this. I normally can write better than this. E7, don't laugh, Andy. E7, and that will take us back to the A minor. Let's just add a few things in that we had earlier on. We had C sharp diminished here. Maybe I'll put that F sharp diminished in second time through. There we go. Yeah, when we go to the F chord again, I'm going to cross that out. I'll do that G minor 7. This is just repeating basically what we did in the top line. By the way, there's a bit of the tune missing at the bottom. I couldn't find page 2, so you'll have to trust me. It ends D minor, G7 and C. The only thing I'm going to change is when we get down to this bottom line here, I know that the mystery chord that's not actually there is D minor 7. So let's see, we could do E minor 7, flattened 5th. That'll take us to A7, and that'll take us to D minor. Hopefully what you're seeing here is that a 2-5-1 doesn't have to happen in one bar. We've got instances here where we're spreading it out actually over 3 bars, but it's that chord progression that eventually resolves nicely, no matter how much the distance. So let's just go through it just piano only for a minute. Then we've got a 2-5-1. There's that A7. It's going to work. We know it's going to work. How long's that took? I know you can argue I know what I'm doing, but if you... Andy's shaking his head. But realistically, that's taken 10-15 minutes to actually arrange that piece of music. I know I've scribbled all over it because it's difficult to write at that angle, but I've now converted a simple lead sheet that wasn't that exciting into something that actually would make you sit up and listen. And I'm going to repeat a couple of things, and I'm not going to make any apology. I know we're probably drilling this in, but we're that desperate for you to have a go at this sort of thing that we're sort of driving home the point, let's put it that way. Even if you don't achieve what we've achieved there, and you achieve half of that, you've made an arrangement. And that's what you need to always bear in mind. Actually, if you change 1 or 2 chords, you've made your arrangement of it. And don't be unhappy. You know, if the first time you do this, you manage to add 2 extra chords, challenge yourself. The next time you go to play it, can I find another chord that I could add in? next time, can I find another chord? And you will end up, I promise you, at this sort of stage. Now, talking about sheet music, this is a little a little gem for you all, really. I passed this website on to Andy this week, and I know he's already made really good use of it.
Brilliant.
Yeah, this is a brilliant website that I stumbled on by accident. It is totally legitimate, and the great thing about it is free. When you go onto it, if you want to make a little donation to help them keep it going, you can, but you don't have to. And if you've all got your pen and paper handy, the website is called KU, so we're just talking letters here, KU PDF, as in PDF files. So let me write it on this music so you can see it's KU PDF. That website, just go to the search bar and either type the title of a piece of music or type an artist in, and I assure you it will come up with hundreds of pieces of music and arrangements of pieces of music. Some of them are arranged for choir and band and orchestras. Actually, those sort of arrangements are brilliant to learn from. You know, if you look at take a Christmas carol that's been scored on there for soprano, alto, tenor and baritone or bass. You can learn so much about harmony by actually looking at the different lines as to what they're doing. And think about Andy's session on sequencing. There's an ideal opportunity to take a simple Christmas carol as an example and record in 3 of the vocal parts. You don't have to use vocal sound all the time. It might sound nice on strings and things like that, but you will learn about harmonies, you know, and the way the 4 harmonies in that case literally just build up a chord spread over the whole keyboard. So yeah, that website, KU PDF, there's probably nobody watching now. They've all gone off to this website. I should have probably saved it right till the end. But yeah, it's a valuable website. So before I sort of finish and play this little arrangement in its entirety, I just want to take 5 minutes out to recap what was the whole point of these 2 pro webinars. We've introduced you to, well, probably to scales. We've introduced you to scale chords as well, which are important when you are working out things like 2-5-1, because you need to know which the second chord is, which the 5th chord is, etc. We've introduced you to 5-1s and 2-5-1s. We've introduced you to how to put chords to something that hasn't got any chords at all. And that's just basically by working out what key it's in. And if you remember, we then used the scale chords in Danny Boy or London Derriere, whatever you want to call it. Tonight's session, we've introduced you to the minor 2-5-1. And we've then basically, and Andy's shown you his little trick on that descending chord, which was lovely. And then we've taken the most basic copy and a wrong copy of Fly Me to the Moon, and we've used everything we've learnt, both major 2-5-1s, minor 2-5-1s, and now this diminished 7th passing chord. We've put it all together in one arrangement. I understand that's a lot of information in a couple of hours. But please watch these videos back. You've got the links now. You and only you that have registered can watch them back to your heart's content. If you still don't understand anything, drop us an email. We're always happy to help. So I hope you've enjoyed those two. Our next pro webinar is at the end of the month, and when we finish tonight, me and Andy will have a chat as to what the subject is going to be. And I just hope you're finding them useful, and I hope, above anything else, it's encouraging you to go and sit at the keyboard and approach things in probably a slightly different way to the way you have done before. All I'm going to do now is just finish off with... I quickly this afternoon put a little backing track together just to show you the effect of this Fly Me to the Moon. And what I'll do is I'll play it through a couple of times. First time I'm just going to use a piano sound. And then the second time I'll use it as a split keyboard, more in sort of a Ranger style. And we'll pop all these extra chords in that we've got here. I think I've put them all in. I'm sure I have. Yep. So I'll chat to you as soon as we finished it. But here's my little version of Fly Me to the Moon. All I've got on the backing track, I've put some drums down. I've done a little bass line and just put a little bit of jazz guitar. That's all it needed. It's not a full-blown sequence or anything, but hope you enjoy it. Well, the other thing, there was one other thing I was just going to show you, and we've got 5 minutes just before I go into this. The other thing which can make or break an arrangement is try and actually feel the piece of music that you're playing. When you look at a lead sheet like this, they're always written in a very wooden way. I can't think of a better way to describe it. If you bought a CD and somebody sang it exactly how it's written there, you'd probably throw the CD away in disgust. Because singers phrase things. They add their own interpretation to it. I was always taught, yes, you've got to keep time. So providing you start the bar in time and you finish the bar in time, what happens in the middle is purely down to you. And I think I said this in the last webinar, we're all afraid to make a fool of ourselves. So you play safe all the time. But look, instead of just doing this, it's not that inspiring. If you maybe try and double up on some of the notes. Even that, straight the way, has changed it. If you're just playing single notes, it doesn't matter. And the other little trick that I often use is take another note from the chord. So I'm on bar 3 here where we've got a G7 chord. Our melody does this. What about take another chord from that G7 and use it as a sort of pivot? So we do this. Okay, so let's just play that first line. And the little trill, you know, the little turnaround there where you go either side of the note that you're actually on. There's so many things you can do to just lift a simple melody. And always remember that music's written. Somebody asked me, well, why do they write it like that? Believe me, if it was written how somebody, a professional singer or somebody like Ella Fitzgerald or Frank Sinatra might sing it, none of us could ever read it because there'll be a mass of short notes, short rests, and it would look so daunting, we'd all just dismiss it and never play it. So music is written in a manner, in this sort of music, that it's written in a way we can all read. It's then open to your interpretation of it. Hope that makes sense. So I will now put my interpretation on Fly Me to the Moon like this. There you go. Complete arrangement of Fly Me to the Moon. We've reached that time of the night where we're going to depart. As always, thank you. And I do mean that when we do these pro webinars. Thank you for supporting it. I hope you found it of interest, and new topic coming very, very soon. Andy?
Some books on ranging and scale course.
Yes, we do. Andy's asked me to remind you. As always, we do have some books on this sort of topic. But yeah, don't be put off by it. I know it's been heavy going. I'm sure it has. But there's all the information you need in that 2+ hours to actually achieve what we've just achieved just then. So thanks ever so much on behalf of Andy and myself.
Good night,
yeah, good night or good day wherever you are. And we'll see you again very, very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.